Wes Goldberg, happy Tuesday, January 14th. So, for you and I who have covered the league in various ways for a while, I want to ask you this, considering how it's just like part of the trade rumor mill at this point when this happens. But when you see Jusuf Nurkic apparently unfollowing Booker and Durant on Instagram, when you see that, how much do you think, okay, that actually matters? That tells me something is happening. Like, how much do you actually give a shit when you see a teammate unfollows a teammate on social, particularly teammate involved in trade rumors?
Well, you kind of asked me two different questions there. How much do I care? Almost zero.
How much does it, yeah, okay. How much does it actually matter, do you think?
I don't think it matters as much as some of these social media aggregating accounts makes it seem like it matters, where it's like, oh my God, Jusuf Nurkic unfollows Phoenix Suns, ? Eyeball emoji. Like it's not that big of a deal, but it's also not nothing. I mean, if you think about how these things work, when was the last time you accidentally unfollowed somebody? You know?
Yeah,
it feels like it's a purposeful act. So look, maybe the guy's just trying to, trim down his social media usage as a New Year's resolution and just say, you know what, it's just going to be the essentials. And the Phoenix Suns tweeting out the game time, and my teammates who I talk to every day, I don't know that I need to necessarily follow these accounts. Maybe he's just trying to trim his access to information. Maybe it's just a New Year's resolution type thing. I have no idea.
Yeah, he's still following 553 people, so he can't have called it that much, I guess. I agree with you. I don't care. I just saw this on Reddit, and it was the hot post on Reddit when I happened to go on NBA Reddit that day. And people do care about this, and it is a random thing. It's one of those things, Wes, that I feel like in some ways, if I was a beat reporter for the Suns, covering the Suns, I would in my head have a minute dialogue of do I have to ask about this? And I would ultimately say someone else can do this.
Yeah, I think, look, the way that I would have handled it back in my beat writing days, I wouldn't have been like, hey, Nurk, what's the deal with unfollowing the accounts? I would have said something more like, because that's an easy sort of out.
You're also getting clipped on Instagram when if they yell at you.
So I would never ask. I would never ask it in a press conference setting. That would be a one-on-one in the locker room.
Disaster. But you're also But even now in the era where everyone has is recording everything, you still might get.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it. Yeah. I would make sure it wasn't in a scrum. This would be me off to the side after or before a scrum, just one-on-one, literally one-on-one, whispering to that player and not even recording it. That's sort of how I would handle it. But then the players, they do this for a reason. And I do sometimes wonder what they're trying to communicate when they do this, because this has become a thing. And it doesn't always lead to a trade or whatever, but Klay Thompson unfollowed the Warriors and then he got traded over the summer. But then also players have unfollowed their team accounts and then nothing ever happened. So
LeBron had that whole thing with Cleveland, and then he did only leave, but it was a while later. But again,
I do wonder if this is sort of the blinking of the headlights a little bit on the highway, where you're just trying to get their attention to accomplish something. In LeBron's case, it was perhaps to make a move before the trade deadline. In the Nurkic case, it's, hey, by the way, I'm not super thrilled about not playing anymore, and this is me flashing my headlights and letting you know about it.
Yes. Weird times. NBA can sometimes be a very dramatic place, needlessly. That was sort of the exercise I was getting into it. All right, on today's show, we're going to bounce around 3 NBA teams. We're going to start with the Pacers, who ended the Cavs' 12-game winning streak on Sunday. We're going to talk about the Houston Rockets and what Jalen Green's stagnation as a player this year tells us about why they're still succeeding and what that means for him. And we're going to talk about the Pistons, who Cade Cunningham is having a monster year, an all-star caliber year, dare I say. I think he's there. I'm kind of there with that now. And what just having maybe an adult head coach can do for your team. That's the JB Bickerstaff top of the resume. Is an adult will get wins out of your team. That's all coming up on today's Just Basketball Show. What is up, everyone? Chris Manning, Wes Goldberg here with you on the Just Basketball Show. If you haven't subscribed already, please do so on your podcast platform of choice. Rate and review on those. Please subscribe on YouTube as well. And find us on all your social platforms. Picks of the Day, sponsored by BetMGM, coming out on X and Instagram daily. So check those out. We also are powered by BetMGM.
If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use the bonus code JustBasketball. You'll get up to $1,500 in a first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM Sportsbook app on iOS or Android. Sign up using the code JustBasketball. Deposit at least $10. Place your first wager on any game, and you'll receive up to $1,500 back in bonus bets if that bet loses. Just make sure that you use the bonus code JustBasketball when you sign up. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Must be 21 or older to wager. Terms and conditions apply.
Also powered by Homage. Homage is the ultra-comfortable specialty apparel company that has NBA, NFL, and WNBA licenses that pay homage to the greatest stories, traditions, and figures across sports, music, and pop culture. Use our link below. Make your purchase. Support the Just Basketball Show. They have a ton of great NFL stuff right now for the NFL playoffs. They have all kinds of NFL teams. I mean, if you want NFL X Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, if you want X Flavor Town, if you just want your favorite pullovers or a parka or a heavyweight satin pullover, they have them at Homage. Use that link below. Support us and get yourself something nice over there at Homage. All right, Wes, let's start in the great city of Indianapolis. We're recording this on the 13th. The Pacers are playing the Cavs in a rematch, back-to-back two-game series on Sunday. Won't have Haliburton for that game with a hamstring injury. Hurt that in the win over Cleveland on Sunday. That's a big concern. I think we can build to that. But, Wes, this team has really turned it around. I think when I read the big Sam Amick, Jared Weiss story in The Athletic last week, I don't know if you caught that, and thought about their season, thought about Haliburton having an injury and then Team USA and then coming right back into the year. And also Nembhard being hurt for a big chunk of the season. Some of their struggles made a little more sense to me when I thought and paused. And when we talked about them last week in our power rankings as well, that made me stop and pause. But in the last 14, third in offense, fourth in defense, fifth in net rating, fewest turnovers in the league, third in assists, fifth and sixth in plus minus, sixth in fast break points, and seventh in points to the paint. They are doing this on both ends of the floor. They are scoring in multiple different ways all over the floor. This turnaround feels like they are back to where they peaked at last year to some degree. It feels like where they peaked at last year towards the end of the season, not the all-offense, all-ghost Pacers, the more balanced version of the Pacers we saw towards the end of the year that made it to conference finals. That version of that team feels like it is coming back into form. The Haliburton injury obviously then throws a huge wrench into this, but the best version of the Pacers feels like it is back here to some degree.
Yeah, Haliburton is questionable for tonight's game, so obviously when people hear this, they'll know whether or not he played or not.
I read that he was out. That is my apology. So I'm just spreading bad news.
So he might be out. I don't know. I'm just looking at the latest injury report from 4:30, so it might have been reported. Whatever. Yeah, look, they look a lot more like the team that they were last season, right? Like the offense is humming. Tyrese Haliburton is in the middle of it. Andrew Nembhard has been awesome for them, and I think something that's kind of flown under the radar, them trading for Thomas Bryant on December 15th. It didn't coincide with the start of the win streak, but it has definitely helped propel this win streak, right? I think they won one or two games before Bryant suited up for them. But with Thomas Bryant now with Miles Turner, they have 48 minutes of decent center play. And that was a hole for them because they started losing centers pretty early in the season. So they trade for Thomas Bryant. And like Miles Turner, he could spread the floor a little bit. He's a big body, hits the glass hard. And now you're able to kind of play your style for those 48 minutes, whether it's with Turner or sort of Miles Turner light and Thomas Bryant coming off the bench. I think that's been really helpful for them. And obviously, the attrition was a big deal at the beginning of the year. You start getting guys back. Maybe we were just too hard on this team at the beginning of the season, right? We've seen this a lot with young teams that make a longer than expected run in the playoffs where they kind of come in the next year and there's a little bit of like a sophomore slump kind of mentality.
Yeah.
And it kind of felt like that was happening with this team. And, they righted the ship. Rick Carlisle's a great coach. And look, I'm not putting them in that top tier with Cleveland or Boston or even New York. But I mean, they're as good as anybody else after that group.
The Bryant injury, I think, is interesting in this one way, Wes, because they had these injuries to Isaiah Jackson and James Wiseman, and had a needed center. They lost 2 centers to Achilles injuries, 2 like in successive days, if I remember correctly, or like really close to each other. They had signed Moses Brown at one point to a deal. He is just big. He's never really stuck in the NBA. He's like 25. He's big. So you go get Thomas Bryant. He's bounced around a little bit the last couple of years, but is a solid pro who I think plays really hard, who can space a little bit, who is at least like a warm body who's going to give you everything he had. Just getting that guy and having like a real backup at center just gave you some adult minutes at that position, which they absolutely needed. This isn't a coach or a team that I think wanted to say, hey, we're going to play Siakam at the 5 and just embrace the weird. I don't think that was ever going to be their identity. I think they also do with Haliburton, with Nembhard, and needing to create some sort of gravity pull in the center of the floor. I think this team did need someone to just be in the center and catch lobs and be a big dude, right? Like I think they needed that simple alternative. Look, the Thomas Bryant shout is a great part. I think when you pair that with Haliburton in particular, I think you can see where this team just starts making sense again. I think too, and I want to get to Haliburton in kind of some big detail, but I think your point, Wes, about hey, this team made a longer than expected playoff run, and then we almost pre decide that they are the new Atlanta Hawks, or whatever the Atlanta Hawks team was before the Atlanta Hawks that made a playoff run. It's like every year there's one team that goes a little too far, or every couple of years in each conference. It's just like there's one team every. It's like, oh, how did they make the Eastern Conference Finals that year? We kind of just, I think, thought the Pacers were just going to be that team from last year, and they still kind of are. But I don't think they're going to drop quite as deep as Atlanta did. They kind of have. They haven't made that move like the DeJounte Murray trade that's going to kill them and force them to reset again. And 2, I think you could just see like once these things are sort of clicking, that they needed time to get things right. And maybe this year will still feel a little bit lower just because they're, I don't think, going to be Cleveland or Boston or New York or whomever. I mean, I don't think I think them against Milwaukee would be like how you pick that would be interesting. It's not like a likely matchup, but I'd have to like think through that one, I think, a little more than the others. But they like the pieces here and the way they play and what works actually makes sense in a way that like it feels a little more real now that we're seeing it again than these other instances. I think that particularly Atlanta comes to mind.
Yeah, I mean, the reasoning behind their slump at the start of the year is obvious. I mean, it's the injuries, right? Like they were really hurt, and Haliburton's hamstring remains an issue, and that might be a long-term thing if you have questions about Tyrese Haliburton. But
it's
look,
a big concern for like the trajectory of his career. That's like the biggest like scary part about it. It's just like it's another hamstring.
So you already mentioned Nembhard missing a big chunk of the season. The attrition at center. They haven't had Aaron Nesmith basically all season with this ankle sprain, and that's a huge missing part of their line. He was the guy that they had guarding Jason Tatum in the conference finals last year. Like that's a big missing part of their formula. And it's taken them a while to figure it out. They're basically playing these 3 guard lineups now with everybody healthy of Haliburton, Nembhard, and Benedict Mathurin. And then you have Siakam and Miles Turner in the front court. And, they've started to figure it out. They needed, a couple months to kind of rejigger the formula and get things going. But yeah, they're good, right? And they probably saved their season by figuring it out here. I would agree with you in terms of what they do going forward. They don't need to make the big DeJounte Murray trade. They made the big Pascal Siakam deal last year. I think this team is going to remain pretty aggressive in terms of being on the trade market. I don't know if it's going to be as aggressive as, hey, let's go get a former All-NBA guy like Siakam again. But I think they're going to always be looking for moves, or at least are in the margins every single year. That's what their front office is essentially expressed. So whatever that might be is a different thing. But going forward, it's a fair question to ask, what are the best pieces to put around Tyrese Haliburton? What kind of players do we need around this guy and around Siakam? Because the other thing is Haliburton is young, Siakam is not. Mm-hmm. And what's the goal, I think, during the Siakam part of this window is a fair question.
Yeah, and I think also Rick Carlisle's not young. Not that Rick Carlisle's going to retire anytime. We don't have any indication he's going to retire, but he's 65. I don't know if you had like if he in a year or two was like actually just want to retire, like I'd be like okay, like I would get it. You have to
Mhm.
like there is a boost I think they get from having one of the best coaches of this generation. Um, it's been interesting, West. Like the Nemhard, they don't want to trade him. I think has been really telling because they just decided he fits well with Haliburton, and I think they've ultimately been proven right. But they've been really willing to give him up, despite he's a guy that when you started hearing any trade stuff this year, people wondered, oh, would a team wanting to get something good from Indiana, could that be a guy they look to trade because of Haliburton and because he has this really tradable contract? And they've just, by all accounts, really rebuffed that. I would doubt he's actually untradeable for the right move, but I think it would take like the gargantuan all-in kind of move for them to even move him. And I do think just having
Yeah,
a
you
guy
would
that
need.
pushes Haliburton off ball, that's a good thing for Haliburton's maintenance, is having a guy who can also dribble and run an offense.
Yeah, it's also a good thing for winning. Like this idea that, oh my God, you don't want another guy in the backcourt because it takes the ball out of Tyrese Haliburton's hands is like the same people who say that often will also cite like, oh, this is why the James Harden Houston Rockets never won because they're too heliocentric. It's like, okay, so which one is it? Do you
You have
always
to
want
pick
the
one.
ball in this one guy's hands? Or yeah. In general, I think you need multiple guys to help spell the lead ball handler and also just add different dynamics to your offense. Nemhard has been a great backcourt fit with Tyrese Haliburton. To me, when Mark Stein reports that Nemhard is basically untouchable, I understand why. He's making $2 million this year. He's making $20 million over the next 3 years. Either way you slice it, whatever contract you want to take, it's both they're both bargains. He's an awesome player. And he still provides some size, still provides some responsible playmaking, but he's also got some chutzpah, like he took he kind of came on the scene when he took that shot in Steph Curry's face against the Warriors as a rookie, hit big shots in the playoffs last year, and where Haliburton is a little bit deferential, a little bit hesitant to always be looking for a shot, it feels like Nemhard is a little bit more willing to just let that thing fly, and maybe that's just a symptom of playing off of Haliburton and Haliburton setting him up. Whatever the case is, I think that's a valuable player to have. Both of them provide some length. I know Haliburton could be hit or miss defensively. Nemhard's a little bit better on that end. But yeah, I think that if that's your backcourt of the future, he's probably not untouchable. That is an overstatement, I'm sure. Like if the Bucks offered Giannis, like that's not untouchable. But absent of getting like an all-star, like a multi-time all-star coming back, I don't know why you would move Nemhard. You would have to. It would have to be the perfect deal. So I don't know, but I do think that this team needs to do something over these next couple of years. And sometimes we confuse the Hawks made the run and then made the DeJounte Murray deal and it set them backwards. And that's why you don't make a big deal after you make a run and you stay patient and you don't overanalyze or you don't love the smell of your own farts so much as the Hawks did. And
Right.
I don't know that that's the right analysis. I think it's close, but to me it's, hey, we're pretty good. Let's make a trade because we kind of have this window that maybe we didn't expect, but don't make the wrong trade, right? And that's what the Hawks did right away. And as soon as they traded for DeJounte Murray, a lot of people were like, I don't know about that fit. So that it didn't work out isn't all that surprising. But for the Pacers, if you make the right trade, I think you're in the ballpark. Tyrese Haliburton is an all NBA caliber guy. We've already mentioned the issues with his hamstring. You never know how long guys are going to be elite. Siakam is elite. Rick Carlisle, like you said, not a spring chicken, not the he's 65 years old. It's time to make a move, right? And it doesn't necessarily mean they have to do it before the trade deadline, but they do need to start thinking about what the next thing is for them and what they'd be willing to part with. And by all accounts, Benedict Mathurin might be available. Miles Turner, by the way, is on an expiring contract. No guarantee that he comes back, even though by all accounts he's very happy in Indiana, but you never know how free agency is going to play out.
Yeah, and like fits them really well. Does Brooklyn give him like a weird offer or something? And you just like, they've been a pretty frugal team historically. Like it is to that point, it is like a pivot point. And like as much as I like Thomas Bryant, like
Can't be the
he's
starter.
bound to start. Can't be the starter, and it's like Wiseman or Jackson coming off of Achilles tears also can't be your starter. Like you'd have to then like go put resources into center, which is just a weird place to be.
Well, and also, but maybe that's also the move, right? I think as good as Miles Turner is, he's not an elite center, right?
He's
good,
not all NBA, sure, yeah,
right? And so maybe okay. Maybe you let Miles Turner walk and you go find that elite center, whoever that might be. I don't know, but whatever it is, the Pacers think they need to do. I hope they at least have that plan because I I do think that they should strike. I don't think that there is any sense in being, super patient. They're not. This isn't the Orlando Magic. In other words, this is not the Houston Rockets. This is a team that kind of has to be winning right now.
Yeah, even Houston, I think, has it's a little more Pacersy, but the Magic is a good comp because it's all young guys, and yes, they're expensive, and they've committed money to guys already, but it is a really young team where you think you have runway. Just Haliburton month over month. I want to give you some shooting splits, October through January so far. First month of the year in 5 games, 34.6% from the field and 25% from 3. It's really bad. November in 11 games, 43% and 37% from 3. So better from 3, but awful overall. December, 46% and 35%, so trending up. And then in January to date, 52% from the field and 46% from 3. His plus minus has gotten better every month. His usage has gotten as high as it has been all year this month. Last month it was dipped a little bit lower. But he's averaging more points. He's averaging more assists this month than he has at any point this year. His rounding to form, I think, with everything else, he has been the guy raising the ceiling, but I think everything else has worked for them too. It's the Mathurin position though that is the trade. It is the small forwardy wing type, right? That's kind of the thing, and that's hard because everyone kind of needs that, but that has to be the move. That would be the position you would think they would trade for. No.
Yeah, and I've seen Cam Johnson as a possible trade target. To me, when you're building around Tyrese Haliburton, you got to treat him like your star quarterback, and you just got to get that guy wide receivers and tight ends, just guys who can run the floor, get open. Cam Johnson is good. I don't know that he's exactly what I'd be looking for if I were the Pacers. I think it's an okay fit, but to me, I'm let's make a real move here. Again, doesn't have to be before the deadline, but that could be a position where you can get an all-star caliber talent. And that's what I would be looking for. I have no names. I have no idea of who that might be.
Can I give you a revisionist history name just to throw it out and see what you say?
Danny Granger?
No, should they have been the Karl Anthony Towns team?
I don't know if no, I don't think so. Towns is kind of a slow player. I want speed. I want speed. Like I said, I want Mike McDaniel, Miami Dolphins, and we need Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and Devin
Tyreek Hill does one out of the Dolphins, so
could be available. Might be an option there.
Yeah. Get more guaranteed money.
Can I give you a name?
Probably. Yeah, please.
I kind of love Zach LaVine for them.
So I was jostling that in my head, and I just couldn't wrap my mind around Nembhard, LaVine and Haliburton. That.
And it's almost impossible to get to the contracts.
Yeah,
I tried it in the trade machine.
You would have to be saying we're trading Nembhard for the lottery ticket of Zach LaVine at much more money.
Yeah, it's hard to get to that money. So, but something like that, a guy who could just sprint, be open, and be a knockdown 3-point shooter, because that is probably the element that they're missing. I mean, you mentioned 3-and-D. That's the obvious element that they're missing, but they have that with Nesmith. So unless they're moving Nesmith on that deal,
yeah, it's
a guy who could just be a knockdown 3-point shooter, it feels like could open up.
Yeah, they traded
that exactly. But
it's you got why, but it's
a better version of that.
Yeah, which is going to be expensive and hard to find, but it's that is kind of they would actually be, if the Nuggets ever did the LaVine trade, they would be a good Michael Porter Jr. team.
Yeah, great call. That's exactly the kind of player they need.
If they could be the third team and send a first and some just throw some picks in there, and the Bulls get Benedict Mathurin or something, and you get MPJ, I would do that. All right, we solved the Pacers. They're going to win the title next year. All right, on the next note, the Houston Rockets. Wes, I just wanted to say, I love this Rockets team. I can't tell you exactly why. I don't know if it's just how damn hard they play every night. How Udoka is just a madman as a head coach in a lot of ways, with how intense he is. The fact that everyone on that roster just feels very bought in. The only guy that doesn't totally work for me here is Jalen Green. You called this. I want to give you some props. When we talked about the 3-year extension he got in the summer, you were like, I don't like this. You were pretty negative on it, and I think you've been proven more right than me. He's still very inefficient. He's not a good decision maker, not a good defender. his contract now to me feels just like the salary they're going to use in a big trade next summer. That is just explicitly what he feels like on this team to me. The way he like dribbles a ton. Michael Pina wrote about this well at the Ringer, but like if you just watch how much he dribbles a ton before he takes shots, it doesn't match what he's actually giving you production wise. I just feel like he is not whatever potential is there, and I think there is a lot, and he was obviously picked high for a reason. It has not come together, and I feel like he just doesn't fit in with what the rest of this team is. It just feels weird to see him on this team where, like, I think eventually, like, it feels like he is just inevitably the odd man out with the Houston Rockets, Wes.
You know what's funny with Jalen Green, too, is I'm more worried about his offense than his defense at this point, right?
Because
Ime
his
Udoka's
whole
playing
value-
him at the end of these games.
Yeah.
He does try defensively, and I think that's why Ime appreciates him and will leave him in at the end of these games. But it just feels like offensively he demands the ball in order to do anything, and then when he's off the ball, he's not enough of a spacer to really engage the defense, and when he's on the ball, he's wildly inefficient. And that's why I hated this extension in the first place. It's like, okay, like everybody kept saying, "Oh, you sign him; it's a very tradable contract." I'm like, is it? Like, I don't. If I'm another team, why am I paying him $20+ million a year? For him to be not just an albatross in terms of the payroll, but he's an albatross on offense because he dribbles the air out of the ball. Here's a great stat from John Schumann, who does his weekly power rankings on NBA.com. He had in that piece. He said, "So the Rockets have won 3 games in a row. In 2 of those games, Jalen Green shot better than 50% from the field. Those were Jalen Green's 7th and 8th games this year, making at least half his shots. That's a bananas number for a quote unquote lead ball handler. That this is only the 7th and 8th time all year for the number 2 team in the Western Conference. This is only the 7th and 8th time all year that you've made at least half of your shots.
It's bad.
You're right. He's more than the odd man out. He's just sort of an odd fit, right? And if I'm another team and I'm the Rockets and I'm trying to engage Jalen Green, I'm saying, okay, we're going to move Jalen Green plus this, and the other thing for our next star player. What's the other team that wants Jalen Green? I'm not positive that team exists. I'm not positive that team exists unless Phoenix completely tears it down and they say, I don't know, I guess we'll just take Jalen Green because we might as well have something. What's the team that wants Jalen Green, right? Even like Brooklyn doesn't want Jalen Green. They have one. His name's Cam Thomas. Who's the team that wants Jalen Green?
I love that we got a Brooklyn doesn't want Jimmy Butler thing this week, but also they're absolutely just waiting for the day Giannis becomes available. And I'm like, okay. It's like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, good for them.
Sure.
But
good for you.
I don't know.
I also would like. It's like Portland, no. Utah, no. San Antonio.
Yeah, I mean, we could do the whole thing where we go through every team.
But I'm looking at all like the bad teams that have room. I mean, like I could see like a revamped New Orleans being like, F it, like why not?
It would be a team that is completely rebuilding and needs a lottery ticket, but like
Toronto,
they got Emmanuel quickly. Like, do they really want to get in on the Jalen Green thing? And he takes the ball away from Scotty Barnes. Like, I don't really know what the trade is, which is why I said just let him go to restricted free agency.
Yeah, they
what's the problem? If he's awesome, great, you match the contract. If not, then you just say, all right, now we actually have our options available. We're not tied to this guy. They could be stuck with Jalen Green here.
And it's like high usage guy, low assist percentage, 1 percentile assist usage ratio. He's in this position, Wes, where like below average effective field goal percentage, below average 3-point percentage, or below average 3-point rate, excuse me. He's above average at the rim, great, but everywhere else on his shot chart is below average. Corner threes below average, non-corner threes below average, long mids below average, short mid and below average. Like he's inefficient everywhere except the rim, and that's like purely feels like an athleticism thing, not like a process or a skill thing too. It's like
and if you look back on last season when he thrived at the end of the year, Şengün was out. And what I'm trying to get to here is maybe you have to bring Jalen Green off the bench as your 6th man when Şengün isn't in the game, and he just plays small. And look, if you're saddled with this guy going forward for a couple of years, you might have to start like, kind of bespoking your rotations just to fit this guy into a place that makes sense, because right now it doesn't work. And this is why this is why nobody can get over the hump and just pick Houston to come out of the Western Conference, despite every advanced metric and everything saying like this is a top 4 team in the league.
Yep.
Nobody's going to get over that hump. And I agree. Like, I don't have them. In my own personal power rankings, I had them 8 this morning. I just can't get there. 7 or 8. I can't get there with them because the backcourt just doesn't work. As Jalen Green has been inefficient, Fred VanVleet has been bad this year.
Yeah,
like they don't have that guy in the backcourt.
VanVleet looks old. Like he just officially looks old now, which is predictable but tough. The other thing I would say is that like not only do I think like do you probably need to figure out like what you're doing with Jalen as far as do you find a way to not start him? But you could argue that like his presence on this roster this year and the contract you gave him, it's like Reed Sheppard hasn't really had much of a rookie year. He's played 30 games. He's played like 12 minutes a game. It's been bad when he's played. He hasn't shot it well. But I feel like that's a guy that I want to, at this point, because he's cheaper and because you just drafted him so high, and he's also still pretty young, I'd want to see what I could get out of him and like give him room to develop, even though you're having the success this year. This still is not about this year for this team. They're not chips all in, and he's kind of blocked from getting like a real run when Jalen Green's playing 33 minutes a night, second most on the team.
Yep.
It's a weird spot. Yeah. Weird spot. I also the who the star is also going to maybe like dictate if he goes, because like hypothetically, if the Bucks like had to blow it up in the summer, I could see the Bucks just being like, yeah, whatever, like we're gonna suck anyway, But what if that star isn't available? I mean, what if it's Durant? And to your point, it's like, are the Suns really going all the way down?
Right.
Jalen Green and Devin Booker,
and Houston has some options too, right? Like they can just have, if that star is this summer, they can pick up Fred VanVleet's team option and just move him in a deal and as an expiring with some draft picks. And that other team probably doesn't want Jalen Green back. What?
Another team would probably prefer the expiring and good locker room leadership Fred VanVleet guy as opposed
with
to
all the draft picks. Yeah, exactly. And so it's a tough spot for them to be in. And the Rockets, what they need to figure out between now and whenever is, all right, Alperen Sengun, he's awesome. Amen Thompson, I think that guy's going to be a star. Do any of these guys really? Reed Sheppard, we like him a lot as a rookie. Do any of these guys really project as the number one option on a championship team? I would argue probably not. Of that group, who do you think has the best chance of being your number one option on a championship team?
Is Sengun in that list or no?
I had Sengun, Sheppard, Amen Thompson. If you want to throw some of these other young guys in the mix, like Tari Eason or Jabari Smith, but I don't think you would. It's Sengun really those three guys.
Sengun is the closest one, and no, everyone else is a no. Sengun is the only one that is possible, and for no one else is it possible.
I would argue Amen Thompson might, if I think he's at the highest ceiling out of the whole group. I think that guy could potentially develop into your superstar, but we're talking about like
5 years from now.
Yeah, like probably something like that. I don't see like an Anthony Edwards type of breakthrough happening. I could be wrong, but yeah, nobody projects to be that guy right now. Like Amen Thompson really needs to that shot has to come around in a real way, and they kind of have to find a way to play him in position also. But yeah, I don't know that Sengun is ever going to be that guy, right? Every Rockets fan wants him to be the next Nikola Jokic, but there's a reason we've never seen Nikola Jokic before, right? He's one of one. So does Sengun top out somewhere between Domantas Sabonis and Jokic? I could see that. Is that the number one option on a championship winning team? Doesn't really feel like it.
No.
So who is going to be that guy is Houston's biggest question mark that they have to answer.
Anthony Edwards, by the way, fined a total of $285,000 so far this year.
Sprite's covering most of it, from what I can gather.
Yeah, that's what the ads are for, so he can get fined for swearing. All right, last thing, Cade Cunningham and the Pistons, Wes. I saw this stat that pointed out that they had won 3 games at this point last year, and they're above 500. This is the latest they have been above 500 in a season in several years. I think there's a chance this team is going to not be like a top 6 real good East team. I don't think that's where they're at, but the way they're playing, I think the discipline they're playing with, I think what it has brought out of Cade Cunningham in particular, I think everything is boding well for them. Still, I think with questions we've talked about that there's work to do. But I actively do think This team feels like it's on the right direction. And there is something very simple about like, okay, we got a head coach that the guy that wants to be here and that the players are responding to. We can paper over a lot of other potential issues because we have that one thing. Like there is something just about that momentum. I think doing this organization and this team a lot of good, and they feel like a team who gives a fuck, and that goes such a long way. I think in just making the most out of these regular seasons. Because some other teams, like Wes, you know this, are checked out, are going through weird stuff, and don't want to be here. The Pistons are
Right.
like lockstep engaged right now, and that I think
They're
the Cade
using
thing's bigger, but yes,
they're almost using like the Monty Williams season as bulletin board material.
yeah,
Right? They're
it
like,
feels
we're
like
gonna show the guy that didn't really want to be here. We're gonna show you that we're not as bad as we were last year. And that sort of propelled them and given them motivation throughout this regular season. JB Bickerstaff, even, he's like, Cavs fired me. I'll show you. I'm still a good coach. And he's been doing a heck of a job for Detroit so far. So they're really great. I enjoy watching them. There's a reason why we picked them as our plant the flag team going into the season. Speaking of the Thompson twins, they have the other one, Asar Thompson, who I love. I think could end up being even better defensively than Amin Thompson, which sounds crazy. But when that guy's locked in, like he is white on rice, man. Like that, there is no escaping him. And so I like a lot of the pieces. The Jaden Ivey bit here is tough because he was so important. This is a team that if I were Langdon and in charge of what was going on there, I don't know. I would be a buyer. I think there's a lot of value in trying to break this sort of playoff dry spell and just say, you know what? We are that team. We are one of the best 8 teams in the Eastern Conference. That's worth a lot for a Pistons team that has seen a lot of losing. To get into the playoffs, I would be making sure, especially after this Ivy injury, let's go out and add some other piece here. It doesn't, I've seen the Zach LaVines and that kind of, it doesn't have to be that. It just has to be, do something to get yourself a little bit of an extra boost here before February 6th and make a run for the playoffs. I think there'd be a lot of value in that. They're going to have to go through the play-in to get there. But, hey, the play-in tournament stuff happens. They can get there.
Yeah, they're going to be in a position where they could get out of there, get to the 8th seed, and then, get shellacked by the Cavs or the Celtics or something. Like
but it's good experience.
But that's good experience. It's a good thing. Cade Cunningham has 7 triple-doubles this season. He had 17 of the Pistons' 35 assists in a win against Toronto, 22 points, 10 boards as well. I mean, he feels like he is also hitting his ceiling this year. When last year it felt like it was where were you with him last year? Were you a little bit unsure? Were you a little bit waiting to see where this is going?
No, I've always been a Cade guy. I liked him a lot last year. He's one of those guys too where you watch him and you feel like the numbers should be better.
Yeah.
And then they weren't, and you're like, oh wow, he does turn the ball over a lot. Oh wow, he does get his shot blocked at the rim way too much for a guy at his size. But I've always bought in. I just think he's got the intangibles, the skills, ability to read the floor, kind of plays the right way, just everything. I enjoy watching him play. So I've always been in on Cade, but he's obviously having a career year right now. 12th in points per game in the Eastern Conference, second in assists per game in the Eastern Conference. I mean, this guy's a shoo-in for an all-star. I don't know how you leave him off.
He's 24, 9.5 assists and nearly 7 rebounds a game against, and it's just there. And I think this is the guy you reward on the Pistons, and I think this team is fully on the right track. It feels like there is, I think between them and Houston, Wes, I think there is something happening of just like, I think going forward, a rule I'm going to have is just if I feel like a team going into the year has motivation to just like actually give a fuck, I'm buying like 10% more stock than the market. Like I'm going to buy like a little higher on a team because the give a fuck factor's there, and it's absolutely there.
No doubt about it. I'm looking at it now. All NBA would be a stretch.
Yes.
But you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You get 6 guards on the All NBA team.
Well, it's positionless.
I don't know. Like, there's a lot. Like, Luka's not even eligible anymore.
It's positionless, no?
Oh, it is positionless. You're right. So he could. Yeah, I mean, he could definitely. There's a lot of guys who aren't even eligible, right? You talk about Luka. LaMelo's probably going in that direction. Obviously Joel Embiid is like. There's a lot of spots available, and you just look at where he is. Like his numbers are up there. Like you just said, he's averaging 24, 7, and 10. How's that not all? It's tough because Detroit's just not winning a ton of games. But if they're in the playoffs, I don't know.
But they're like competent.
It's possible.
Like, would you rather have Cade Cunningham this year or LaMelo Ball this year? I'd rather have Cade.
I'd rather have Cade.
Hornets are 8-28.
Yeah, they
1-9. 1-9 in their last 10. Don't need to watch the Hornets much anymore and stuff.
We didn't even make it to February.
Didn't even make it to February. They didn't even get there, and I'm at least kind of considering tapping out, at least unless they're playing like a good team and I want to watch or something like that. But that's gonna be it for the Just Basketball show. Pistons on the rise, Rockets on the rise, but big Jalen Green question.
Man, we called, like, honestly, like I feel like we don't do enough of a victory lap on that. We called the Pistons.
We called the Pistons.
We took the over. We
planted
planted our flag. We
yeah.
actually not only the Rockets were a little bit easier. Like a lot of people were sort of in on the Rockets.
Yeah.
We were
Pistons. That
was pretty out of left field for Detroit, and
we got it.
Yeah, not only did we take the over on them for win total, but we did something even more dramatic, which was commit to talking about them throughout the season. And like, not only were we right about them being qualitatively better than they were last year, but also a lot more interesting than they were last year. And we were right on both counts. So good for us.
And I don't even like some of the pieces like beyond this year. Like if they're still like relying on Tim Hardaway and Tobias Harris next year, I'm going to be a little worried. And Malik Beasley next year, I'm going to be a little worried. But for this year, F it. It's fine. It's 1 year.
Called it.
That's all we need. We live in a year-by-year thing. Beef Stew, one of the most fun players, role players on League Pass, just always do up to something. Watch your local Detroit Pistons. They're a good time. We're going to end there. Back later this week with more than Just Basketball show. Have a great week, everyone. Enjoy the hoops.